For 600 years, one empire fought war after war against kings, sultans, rebels, crusaders, and rising European powers. They conquered lands, lost lands, rebuilt borders, survived crises, and kept armies marching from the Balkans all the way to the Arabian desert. And through all of it, they pulled off something almost no empire in history ever managed. They fought constantly, without going bankrupt. Because the Ottomans didn't just know how to wage war. They figured out how to pay for war. Endlessly. Welcome to the Capital Historian, where money, power, and history collide, and nothing is ever as simple as it looks. The Ottoman Empire lasted from about 1299 to 1922, longer than Rome, longer than Britain, longer than almost any state we think of today. But the impressive part isn't the timeline. The real mystery is this. How did an empire that fought almost non-stop for centuries not collapse under the financial weight? People often assume empires die because they lose battles, but battles don't bankrupt nations. Budgets do, leadership does, logistics do. And very early on, the Ottomans understood this. Instead of building a standard tax and army system like Europe, they built something far more efficient, a machine where war could pay for itself. But before we get into that machine, we need to understand what the Ottomans actually were. For many people, the empire is just an image, turbans, sultans, domes, janissaries. But the structure behind those images, the centuries-long financial engine, is the real story. The Ottomans began as a small frontier principality in northwest Anatolia, led by Osman I. Basically a warlord, with a few thousand riders and perfect timing. The Byzantine Empire was falling apart. Mongol influence was fading, and Osman's tribe sat in the perfect spot to carve out new territory. Their early victories weren't just military wins, they were financial jackpots. Every conquest meant new land, new resources, new crops, new people, and new taxes. From day one, war wasn't a cost, it was income. By the time they captured Bursa in 1326 and crossed into Europe by the 1350s, they weren't a frontier tribe anymore. They were a rising empire sitting on the world's busiest trade routes. Medieval Economics 101. Whoever controls the roads controls the money. Every merchant traveling between Europe and Asia passed through Ottoman territory, and every one of them paid for that privilege. This mattered because war always requires three things: food, metal, and manpower. The Ottomans didn't necessarily have more of these than their rivals, but they had something even more important: cash flow. Their territory was the beating heart of the world's trade. Silk, spices, horses, carpets, metals. Everything moved through their lands, and the state took a slice every time. But having money isn't the same as using it well. Plenty of rich empires still collapsed under military costs. What made the Ottomans different was structure. They built a system that turned their army into a self-financing institution. And that brings us to one of the smartest and most misunderstood financial innovations in Ottoman history, the Timar system. Imagine running a government and trying to avoid your biggest expense, military payroll. In Europe, kings paid their soldiers in cash, expensive cash. If the treasury ran dry, soldiers went home. The Ottomans avoided this entirely. A Timar was basically a tax district. Instead of paying a Sipahi cavalryman a salary, the state gave him the right to collect taxes from a village or region. In exchange, he equipped himself, maintained his horse, bought his weapons, and showed up ready for war. No salary, no massive payroll, no financial strain. The soldier funded himself. The village stayed stable. The empire kept an army ready without emptying its treasury. It was financial engineering centuries ahead of its time, and it worked beautifully. Ottoman warfare became cheap, radically cheaper than Europe's mercenary and night-based systems. When war came, the system simply activated, no budget crisis. But the Timar system was only half the engine. The other half? The janissaries. People know the name but not the economics behind it. The janissaries were elite infantry. Disciplined, trained young, loyal only to the state. The way the empire acquired them is controversial, yes. Through the devshirme system, the collection of boys from Christian villages. The ethics are complicated. But financially, the impact was massive. The empire didn't bear the lifetime cost of raising these children. That burden fell on the conquered populations. By the time the boys entered the Janissary Corps, the The state received fully formed, highly trained soldiers at a fraction of the usual cost. And once in service, the janissaries were paid and housed, but forbidden from marrying or building independent wealth early on. This kept the military professional and cheap. Cavalry paid by tax rights, infantry acquired at minimal cost. Together they created a military that Europe simply couldn't afford to copy. But the Ottomans didn't just cut costs. They made war profitable. Every new conquest brought new land, new taxpayers, new timars, new ports, new tolls. Other empires won wars and came home poorer. The Ottomans won wars and came home richer. This wasn't luck. It was design. Their geography gave them control over the world's most profitable crossroads, the Bosporus, the Dardanelles, the Eastern Mediterranean, and the old Silk Road routes. If you wanted to move goods between continents, you paid the Ottomans. They also built state monopolies on salt, tobacco, coffee, sometimes soap. Reliable income machines that funneled money straight into the treasury. Think of them as early versions of modern national oil companies. Saudi Aramco is just the 21st century version of an Ottoman monopoly. They also used tribute states, regions that paid annual sums to avoid direct Ottoman rule. Cheap, efficient, and profitable. And for centuries this system worked so well that the Ottomans avoided something that destroyed many other empires: debt. No massive borrowing, no crushing interest payments, no foreign bankers pulling the strings. For a long time the empire lived within its means, but nothing lasts forever. By the 1600s and 1700s the world changed. European powers industrialized. Trade shifted from land routes to ocean routes. Gunpowder and technology advanced faster than Ottoman reforms. Suddenly the empire couldn't rely on caravans and tolls anymore. The Timar system decayed. Local tax holders became corrupt and unreliable, and the janissaries, who were once elite, grew powerful enough to challenge the sultans themselves. Reform became impossible. Costs rose, efficiency fell. And eventually, the Ottomans turned to the one financial tool they had avoided for centuries: foreign loans. In the 1800s, they borrowed heavily from European banks. Debt piled up. Payments fell behind. In 1881, European powers took control of the Ottoman treasury, the final blow to centuries of financial independence. It's a familiar pattern, isn't it? A great power rises with discipline, survives through innovation, and falls when economics stop working. Which brings us to the present. Because if you think the Ottoman system sounds ancient, look again. We're still using the same mechanisms today. Outsourced military logistics, modern version of the Timar system. Strategic trade choke points, modern versions of Ottoman tolls, national monopolies, today's oil companies and sovereign wealth funds, resource-driven wars, conquest paying for conquest, and crushing national debt. The final stage of decline, then and now. Empires don't die in battle. They die on the balance sheet. The Ottomans lasted 6 centuries because their financial system worked. They collapsed when it didn't. That's the real lesson here. Power lasts only as long as the money behind it. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. History has the answers, and I'll show you where to look.